He's not stopping the crime and the trafficking issues that are the real national emergency.
Well, I understand that they're coming here to seek a better life, but they can't just do it illegally. They have to go through the system that we've set up.
How do you feel about the political language that is used to describe the Latin community?
We're either like illegal aliens that are invading, or we're like the children of illegal invaders and we bring crime.
I believe, when he uses language like Mexico isn't sending their best, they're sending their criminals and rapists and things like that. My own mother is undocumented, so to me, you're calling my family that.
Honestly, by this point, it's just understandable that he kind of mouths off, he talks without a filter, so most of the time when he says something, I've just learned to take it with a really tiny grain of salt, so it really just doesn't bother me anymore. It's I don't really care.
His actions speak way more louder than words.
He ran an ad shortly before the midterm election that depicted a bunch of illegals flowing over the border, and then he tried connecting that to an individual man who was undocumented, who murdered somebody. And I do think that stuff like that definitely stokes division among people. And I hear people say things like, oh, do you think they're illegal? And it's insane. I do think that he contributes to a really divisive rhetoric.
More personally, how has your identity been received in your communities? Or your political identity been received in your communities?
People in my community hate me.
I have trouble talking with other people who very politically and ideologically for me, especially when it comes to work. I'm an art major, animation major, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of artists who are all, most of which are very left-leaning, and it's very hard to actually have some sort of discussion when your political ideologies are linked to your personal identity as a person.
It's no longer that this person just disagrees with me. They're seen as the enemy, right? Mm-hmm. So I've been unfriended by family members who are upset that I'm too critical of the president, but I've also been ostracized by people on college campuses who think I'm too right-wing. I ran for board of directors last year, and I was called a white nationalist just for saying that I thought that Milo had a constitutional right to speak, even though I abhor what he has to say. So, being anything other than a liberal, moderate, centrist, center-right on a college campus, people, they find you abhorrent.
Well, for me, it's actually made things a lot easier, because as a socialist, it's actually made socialist ideas and what we've been talking about for possibly over a century, a lot more salient and a lot more true, a lot more relevant, because of just the certain actions committed by this administration. It has given us a lot more purchase within, especially the immigrant community.
In high school, the first 2 years I went to public school and in Santa Ana, so it was pretty much all Mexicans, and we were all pretty liberal. But I'm a moderate, so I would get kind of pushback on some issues. Yeah, I'm a moderate. I'd get pushback on a few issues. But when I transferred schools to a private school in Costa Mesa, and it was majority whites, and there was definitely a way bigger pushback there, because for example, during pep rallies, I would bring my Mexican flag, and I'd instantly get from everybody build that wall, and it was hold up, I'm not an illegal immigrant, I was born here, but they assume that because I'm proud of my heritage, that I must just be some foreigner, I'm some invader.
When people from my side do things like that, where they say go back or they just chant build the wall, it's just a sign of ignorance, and it's hurtful to the actual idea about stronger border security and stronger policies. It's hurtful if you just group it up as some kind of offensive movement of hate speech, I would most likely describe it as.
Is there such thing as not being enough Latin, at least speaking more within our Latinx communities, coming from a Latin heritage? Is there such thing as not
being Mexican enough?
Yeah, for example, some Latin people may say, if you don't speak Spanish, you're not Latin.
I've been hit with that one because I don't speak a lot of Spanish, and my actual Spanish skills are very poor, unlike these guys. I've been hearing them speak Spanish, I'm oh no. And then, I get a lot of pushback for not being Mexican enough for that.
People would always be oh, you're a fake Mexican. It's what? It's what? Hold on, I'm darker than you, but and that was a stupid argument too. But there's definitely different criteria. Do you like spicy food? Or, do you listen to a kind of music like banda or whatever? You're not Mexican enough. It's it's not true.
It's funny because the accusations of not being Mexican enough comes from other Mexicans.
Just like the culture here is way different. We are looked down, so maybe Latinos might not want to be Latino. They want to fit in, maybe. I don't know, I'm not sure, but the representation is not too much there. A lot of people are scared to come forward.
I think for me, people often write me off as being Latinx. I mean, they look at me and I look like a very white guy, right? And then they're like, Rodriguez, your last name is Rodriguez, and then, oh, you speak Spanish? And I'm like, also Spanish. And so I constantly feel, because I feel so much more detached from it than like a lot of Latinos do in the United States. So I often feel like I am not enough, even when like deciding whether or not to participate, I kind of have that question. But I was like, I've come from a family of immigrants. I think that I have the perspective to give on this, even if I don't look like it.
I believe, like, I totally agree that a lot of other Latinos are the ones that, like, put pressure on you. Like, even my own dad, like, Spanish was my first language, but, I go through school and stuff, so I started to kind of forget it because English is primary for me. And he would be like, well, you don't know Spanish well enough, or, like, you're not Mexican if you can't handle chili, because, like, I can't do
How has immigration influenced your experiences?
If it wasn't for immigration, I wouldn't even be here. So, my mom came here undocumented when she was small. And in a lot of ways, I feel like the harsh policies are unfair because my mom came here when she was 6. It's not like she got to say, like, well, I don't want to go, or, it's just like, we're coming.
For me, I would say that that immigration, the way it's impacted my family, has actually made me think very highly of this country. My grandfather came from Colombia with nothing, and wasn't until a little bit later in his life, but he's got a college degree, master's degree, and was able to make something of himself. And I think that to me has sort of taught me American exceptionalism and the ability to take advantage of the opportunity in this country, even with coming with nothing, even with facing discrimination for barely speaking any English.
I sincerely believe we would have been better off in Mexico. My father, who went through a long time under an apprenticeship to become a chef, now works slightly above minimum wage and gets hyper-exploited all the time, which is normal for the restaurant industry. And my mother, who has a bachelor's degree in social work, gets paid very little. And now we just basically being assimilated into the lower rungs of the working class.
Is immigration a national emergency?
No.
Definitely not. I could argue on that, but because I guess you could say apprehensions on the border, they've been declining since the 2000s.
I think an unsecure border is a national emergency. I mean, you do have issues with. I mean, if you care about human trafficking, for example, I mean that is an issue that's happening with a border that's not fully secure. That doesn't mean that the president has the authority to do what he did. Exactly. That's not a defense. That's not a defense of him declaring a national emergency and then using a statute that totally does not authorize him to do what he's doing now.
Experts have said that Trump's wall and border security plan isn't going to reduce drug trafficking and things like that, which is the real issue. And if that's the issue, then the way he's going about it is not the right way. All he's doing is stopping people that are looking for a better life from getting in. He's not stopping the crime and the trafficking issues that are the real national emergency.
Well, I understand that they're coming here to seek a better life, but they can't just do it illegally. They have to go through the system that we've set up. As a nation, we have a right to defend our sovereignty. We have the right to determine who gets in and who doesn't.
The proper avenues cost money and they take a lot of time. When you're talking about a family like my family that had they didn't even have electricity. Like, how are they supposed to afford that and have that kind of time, especially coming from countries that are in like civil war and things like that? They don't have the time to go through these processes. And so you want to say that it's unfair for them to come in here illegally, but it's unfair to make the process so difficult for people who have no money and no resources.
They absolutely need the help because they're actually in danger. Then we have the resources for them to not skip the line, but at least have an alternative path that's still legal. The solution isn't just to let them all into our country. The solution is to fix their countries.
I'm not saying let everybody in. I mean, the caravan came. I didn't want everybody to go in. But if they can pass over, I'm gonna turn a blind eye.
You're turning away people that really need this. You're turning away people that if they go back to their countries, they're looking at like, life or death situations.
And that's why we should help them fix their own countries and bring their problems over to here.
By show of hands, who here thinks that DACA should be upheld?
That should be what?
Upheld.
I need more clarification. I don't know what that question means, right? Because you could talk about it legislatively, or you could talk about the way it was done by executive order.
I support it legislatively, not through executive.
So it should be on a congressional level rather than.
Well, let's talk about both.
Yeah. So legislatively, as I said earlier, like 100% people who are brought here under the age of 18 should be not just given amnesty, but a pathway to citizenship. But just like we were talking about having more border security, but being fundamentally opposed to President Trump using an illegitimate way to try to construct that wall, sometimes you have to recognize that even if I want a certain policy, it has to go through the proper means and not the president overstepping their bounds.
So it should be a long-term fix instead of just this little
Yeah,
temporary
yeah,
fix.
absolutely, yeah, because
Yeah,
it's not
so
about, it has good intentions as a program.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's, like, cause like we were talking about earlier, these kids who were just brought here as young people, they are exempt from the crimes that their parents committed.
But the one tricky thing about amnesty is that it kind of incentivizes people to try to get in, to try to sneak in illegally, because then it puts into their minds that if we just get over the border and hunker down and wait it out, eventually someone's going to make us citizens.
Children aren't thinking that when they come over here. It's their parents that are thinking that, and their parents aren't eligible for anything.
Even if the parents don't get a direct benefit from it, they'll at least have the intention of, oh, I'm going to give my kid a better life, which is a noble decision to make, but nonetheless, it doesn't make it legitimate or legal.
Why is it important to have this conversation right now?
Oh, well, I mean, sharing of just differing ideas. I mean, there's some stuff here that I didn't realize, was apparent in my, just, I guess, studies of different political ideas.
And especially as a minority and as a woman, because in case you haven't noticed, I'm the only girl here. I believe that for me as a woman, it is my responsibility with someone with legal status in this country to speak up for the people that feel like they can't, and they need somebody to follow. They need to see that I can do this, and this is something that needs to be done.
I'm going to take my backpack. Can you get a college card, please? I'll need a backpack. My backpack's right here.
It's okay.